Hello my fellow hunters. So to celebrate my channel reaching 250 subscribers, I decided to do a new monster list, which is my top 20 favorite monsters from the series. This list was difficult to make since I have a lot of favorite monsters from the series, and if there's monsters on this list that you don't like, then I'm sorry, but this is my top 20. So let's dive in and start with number 20. Harag, the apex predator of the Frost Islands. Harag was on my previous monster lists, and he is my second favorite fanged beast from the series. Afflicted Harag is one of the most difficult afflicted monsters to fight at level 200. In master rank, Harag can close the distance between you and him due to his improved speed and moveset. Many of his blade swings can caught you if you are not prepared, and his strongest attack can be deadly if you don't avoid it at the right time or parry it. Harag has become one of my all-time favorite monsters, mainly because of his design and also because of his fight is unique in Sunbreak. I'm just disappointed that he didn't get a subspecies or a variant, because a lot of people love Goss, but we might get one in the future if he returns in the next Monster Hunter game. So Harag is number 20, and so let's move on to number 19. Silver Rathalos. First introduced in Monster Hunter G, Silver Rathalos was the first rare species introduced to the series alongside Gold Rathian. Silver and Gold are staple rare species that are in every single G rank expansion, and out of the two, Silver is my favourite. I first fought Silver Rathalos in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Then he returned in Generations Ultimate, Iceborne, and now Sunbreak. Silver Rathalos in Sunbreak is more aggressive this time around. His moveset has changed from Iceborne. He now spends more time on the ground and is more in your face. And he has borrowed some attacks from Dread King Rathalos and also Apex Rathalos. His Hellfire state also returns, which was introduced in Iceborne. When he goes into Hellfire mode, his head starts to heat up and his flames become blue, making his fire attacks much stronger. Silver was added to Sunbreak in the first update, and he brought with him a unique armor set and also some new options for fire weapons. His weapons do look awesome and have a good ball of wide sharpness, along with decent slots. His armor, however, is good just for one new armor skill: Element Exploit. Element Exploit increases the damage of elemental attacks when hitting weak points, which makes elemental weapons really strong in Sunbreak. Overall, Silver Rathalos is one of my favorite rare species, and I adore its color scheme because silver is my second favorite color, and I was glad that he returned. Silver Rathalos is number 19. So let's move on to number 18. Espinus the Thorn Wyvern, the flagship of Monster Hunter Frontier. Espinus was the first Frontier monster to be in the main series game, which opens up the doors for more Frontier monsters to be added into the main series. Espinus has a very aggressive moveset that is drastically different from other flying wyverns. He borrows some attacks from Diablos and is the only monster in the series that has a unique fire breath that gives you 3 blights: fire, poison and paralysis, which makes his fire breath really deadly, even more deadly when it comes to his afflicted form. Espinus' armor also has a brand new armor skill called Foray, a skill that boosts attack when a monster is poisoned, which makes poison weapons very strong for raw options in Sunbreak. Espinus also has a subspecies that was added but is also from Frontier, Flaming Espinus. They are both awesome monsters, but I prefer regular Espinus, mainly because I think he is more aggressive and his charge attacks can catch you off guard since he can change direction at any point during his charge. Overall, Espinus is one of the best fights in Sunbreak and can be very difficult at times. I also like his design since he is a bit more bulky looking than other flying wyverns and has huge thorns across its whole body, which makes a great defense against other giant monsters. And also his armor and weapons do look awesome, especially for layered. Since we got Espinus and Flaming Espinus added to Sunbreak, I'm hoping in the future that we get more Frontier monsters because some of them are quite unique. And on that note, let's move on to number 17. Zamtrios, a amphibian introduced in Monster Hunter 4. Zamtrios' design is based off a toad and also a shark. He behaves much like real sharks in real life. He spends most of his time submerged underwater, which makes it easy for him to ambush prey from below. He can also shoot torrents of water from its mouth. I first fought Zamtrios in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and he is one of my favourite monsters from that game. Zamtrios' fight is quite basic, but honestly he is one of the most fun monsters in the series. When it comes to Zamtrios, he has got a unique gimmick, just like other monsters such like Glacial and Nectar, Volcana and also Lunagaron. He can create ice armor to cover his whole body, along with a jagged spear on the end of its snout. Zamtrios has got 3 phases to his fight. The first phase is his normal phase, where he just attacks you like normal. In the second phase, after he gets enraged, he will cover himself in ice armor If you break enough parts, you can actually knock him over and open up some opportunities for extra damage. And for his third phase, if you do enough damage to him, he will blow himself up like a balloon, which is only unique to him. In this phase, the fight becomes way more fun, and honestly, it's one of the most best things about Sanctrios. When he is in this state, he can roll and jump on top of targets, which is kinda funny when you first fight him. He also has a subspecies in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, which is called Tiger Stripe Sanctrios, which is a Sanctrios that has paralysis, which can be annoying at times. But overall, Sanctrios is just one of my all-time favourite monsters in the series, and since Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate is one of my most favourite games, I really adore Sanctrios, and I was kind of disappointed that he never returned for Sunbreak, even though we have the baby versions in the Frost Islands. I've also used Sanctrios in my playthrough of Monster Hunter Stories 2. He wasn't the best monster, but he was a cool one. And also, the Frozen Seaway theme is one of my favourite themes from the series, and I just wish Sanctrios would return, because I miss him. And he is my most favourite amphibian in the whole series. And on that note, let's move on to number 16. Thunderlord Zynoga, one of the best deviants from Generations Ultimate, and one of the most difficult. Thunderlord Zynoga dishes out his attacks a lot faster and harder than regular Zynoga. In G rank, most of Thunderlord's attacks will one-shot you, such as his Tail Slam, his Claw Stomp, and his ultimate attack, which is an electrical discharge that has a large radius, which can catch you off guard when fighting him from G1 to EX. Thunderlord is one of my favourite deviants from Generations Ultimate, and he is my favourite version of Zynoga. He made his return in Rise as Apex Zynoga, but Thunderlord feels more of a threat compared to Apex Zynoga. I also love Thunderlord's colour scheme a lot, since it is a dark green with a yellow aura when he is fully charged, which looks really badass. His EX is single-handedly one of the hardest fights in Generations Ultimate, but since I've beaten EX Thunderlord, he has become one of my favourite monsters from the series, and he is just an awesome deviant. So, let's move on to number 15. Scorned Magnamalo, a variant of Magnamalo that has survived many battles with other monsters, which has broken one of its horns and also lost an eye in the process. Since this Magnamalo has a broken horn, it gets rejected by other female Magnamalo since its horns are used for display. So scorned Magnamalos tend to isolate themselves from other monsters, and tend to be very aggressive towards anything that invades its territory. Scorned Magnamalo is unlocked at Master Rank 100 just like Runa Nugigante from Iceborne. Scorned has the best blast weapons in Sunbreak, and they look awesome. His armor has its uses, but the main thing is, the waist piece gives you Mail of Hellfire, which is a powerful skill for both elemental sets and raw sets. Scorned is one of the best fights in Sunbreak, since he has a large range of AoE attacks and combos, along with a new enraged state. He is a monster that I fight often when it comes to his afflicted form, and he is just a badass monster with a unique design which improves upon the regular Magnum Arlo. Also, Magnum Arlo's battle theme is hands down one of the best tracks in Rise, and I hope that Scorned Magnum Arlo returns in a future game, because he is just an awesome monster. And so, let's move on to number 14. Lagiacrus, the Lord of the Seas. The Leviathan flagship from Monster to Try. Lagiacrus was the first Leviathan ever created. It is a fan favourite and beloved by many hunters. I first fought Lagiacrus in Monster Generations, and then farmed him in Monster Generations Ultimate. The more I fought him, the more I started to love his fight. Lagiacrus has the ability to store and discharge Thunder Element, which is similar to Sinoga and also Astalos. The difference is, Lagiacrus's back will glow and be covered in electricity, and also its jaws will be crackling with thunder. Lagiacrus has the ability to discharge thunder orbs that rotate around its body, which can knock you back or stun you. Lagiacrus is an awesome monster, and it's a shame he hasn't returned in future games. He was supposed to return for Monster World, but unfortunately he was cut because they couldn't get his skeleton to work. If Lagiacrus made it to World, we would have seen his subspecies and his rare species, Avery Lagiacrus and Abyssal Lagiacrus. Honestly, I love Lagiacrus. He is my most favourite Leviathan in the series. And in Generations Ultimate, I used his Switch Axe, which is one of my favourite weapons. So I'm hoping Lagiacrus can return for future games, since he wasn't added to Sunbreak. And so, let's move on to number 13. Barioth. First introduced in Monster to Try, this Ice Tusk Wyvern rules the Hoarfrost Reach. Its large amber tusks can pierce the hide of any monster, and it can create powerful ice tornadoes with its breath. A flying wyvern that can latch onto any icy surface, and can pounce on any unsuspecting hunters. I first fought Barioth in Iceborne, since World Iceborne was my first Monster game. Barioth has now been on multiple monster lists now, and that I've fought him in both Rise and Generations Ultimate, and I still think that Iceborne's version of Barioth is the best version, since I enjoy his fight much more in Iceborne than in any other game. He is pretty much my go-to monster to try out new weapon sets. He is also one of my favourite monsters from Iceborne, mainly because of its design since it is based on the saber-toothed tiger. But my only issue is that sadly his subspecies wasn't added to Iceborne, which is Sandbarioth, which is another monster that needs to return for a future game. And so, let's move on to number 12. Primordial Malzeno. A brand new variant of Malzeno that has rejected the bond with the Curio. Its true form. Primordial was the final monster to be added to Sunbreak, and he is one of the hardest Elder Dragons in Sunbreak, possibly harder than Amatsu. Primordial Malzeno has a unique armor set that offers a new skill called Blood Awakening. A skill that increases your damage when you break a monster part, and also when you hit a body part that is already broken. So the skill is very strong when you are fighting afflicted monsters, since you can get every break, but however, Blood Awakening is not really useful on Elder Dragons, since Elder Dragon parts are tougher to break, and only break when they are close to death, such as Camillus and Kushala. Primordial Malzeno's design is quite slick, and it resembles a knight. It is said that this Malzeno protects the kingdom from other threats, until it got corrupted by the Curio. So Malzeno has interesting lore behind it, and his fight is just brutal and fun. This Malzeno is one of the fastest monsters in Sunbreak when it comes to dishing out attacks, which makes his fight difficult at times, but honestly he is a lot of fun, but he will caught you if you slip up. Primordial Malzeno is just a badass monster, and since he is the original form of Malzeno, there is a high chance that he will return for the next Monster Hunter game. And so on that note, let's move on to number 11. Vitalis, the first Black Dragon and the endgame boss of Monster Hunter 1. He is at the top of the food chain. Nothing else comes close to him. Even other black dragons. Morales will avoid Vitalis. Electron will flee from Vitalis. The guild heavily fear Vitalis because Vitalis destroyed Castle Shrade many centuries ago due to the Great Dragon War, where countless monsters were slaughtered to create a new form of life. The equal dragon weapon. A weapon mix of all the corpses of every elder dragon that was slain. Vitalis has caught wind of this, then wiped out the whole civilization from the face of the earth. Hence why in the special assignment it says that Vitalis can wipe out all life in a single night. Vitalis was the last monster to be added to Iceborne, and he is the hardest monster in Iceborne, even harder than Electron. I first fought Vitalis in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, alongside his subspecies as Crimson Vitalis and also White Vitalis. But Iceborne's version of Vitalis is the best version. Since Vitalis was the final monster to be added to Iceborne, he also has the best equipment and weapons. His armor is very strong. The 2-piece bonus can increase the cap of any skill, and the 4-piece bonus gives you razor sharp and also maxes out your health and stamina from start of the quest. So you don't even need health boost on your sets anymore. Vitalis is easily one of the most scariest monsters in the series, since Iceborne has confirmed some of its lore, as in it burns hunters alive and then melts them down into the scales, making its hide a lot tougher. Also, if a hunter kills a Vitalis and wears his armor, sooner or later that armor is going to start regenerating, where that hunter is going to be consumed and be born into a new Vitalis, because Vitalis and other black dragons are immortal. So Vitalis has the ability to regenerate even from the smallest scale. So as soon as he starts regenerating from a human's armor, that hunter is going to be consumed, which is a pretty dark for a Monster Hunter. Overall, I love Vitalis. Yeah, he can be a bit of pain in Iceborne, but he is the hardest monster in Iceborne for a reason. And his fight is pretty good, and his armor and weapons are worth it, since they are the strongest in the game. And also I like the fact they remade this theme for Iceborne, which sounds pretty amazing. I wish that Crimson Vitalis and White Vitalis got the same treatment. We might see them in a future game, who knows. But Iceborne's version of Vitalis is my favourite version, and he is a monster that I go back to fight every once in a while. Same as Electron. But Vitalis was a very good send-off to end Iceborne, and I hope he comes back in a future title. And so, let's move on to number 10. Puke. My most favourite bird wyvern in the series. Puke's design is honestly one of my favourites. He looks really adorable. Puke is also known to have poisonous toxins inside his body, and honestly he is my most favourite poison monster. Ever since World came out, Puke has made its way into every other game, like Monster Hunter Rise and also Stories 2. The reason why I love Puke so much is because he plays a big role in the Witcher crossover event. If you manage to find and rescue the Puke, he will help you fight the Leshen, which is why the Witcher event has become one of my all-time favourite quests, mainly because of Puke. Puke has been on many of my monster lists now, but there's no surprise since he is one of my all-time favourite monsters. He is essentially the best boy, so... But overall, Puke is just an awesome monster, and he is one of the best monsters introduced in Monster Hunter World. And so, let's move on to number 9. Goran Golem, one of the 3 lords of the Citadel. Goran Golem is my favourite out of the 3, and he is my most favourite fanged beast in the series. Goran Golem's design is based off the iconic monster Frankenstein, which is really unique. Goran Golem's fight is drastically different from other fanged beasts, mainly because he has 2 phases to his fight, and each arm can give you Water Blight and Blast Blight. When it comes to his armor and weapons, they are unique, but his weapons only go up to blue sharpness, which is a letdown, but they are good for early game progress, since they have high attack. When Goran Golem has 20% health left, he goes into his final phase, where his features start to change, and he looks a lot more like Frankenstein. In this state, he has a new ultimate attack. Basically, he superheats the rock underneath him, and then hits it with his arms, causing a steam explosion, which can one-shot you in level 200 quests. Overall, Goran Golem is an amazing monster, and he is an afflicted monster that I fight regularly. And I hope he returns in a future game, and maybe he will receive either a variant or a subspecies, since he is still considered a low tier monster. And on that note, let's move on to number 8. Teostra, the Emperor of Flames. One of the original 3 Elder Dragons introduced in Monster Hunter 2. Teostra is my favourite out of the 3, mainly because his design is based on a manticore, which makes him look really intimidating. Iceborne's version of Teostra is my favourite version, even though I have fought him in previous games and also fought Risen Teostra in Sunbreak. In Iceborne, Teostra's armor became meta since you can combine it with Raging Brachydios and get Master's Touch on your set. Teostra's world theme is one of my favorite themes in the series, and it makes you feel like you're fighting a king. Teostra is pretty much the king of the Elder's Recess, but however, he isn't alone in this spot. He has a partner. Lunastra, the female counterpart to Teostra. Lunastra and Teostra bond for life, just like Rathian and Rathalos. Lunastra was also introduced in Monster Hunter 2, and she has made her grand return in Monster Hunter World, and she is similar to Teostra when it comes to her moveset, but her flames are a lot hotter than Teostra's. I love Lunastra's design mainly because of her colour scheme, since blue is one of my favourite colours and it makes me like Lunastra more. But however, when she first came out, she gave me and many others many problems, mainly because of her Nova. But over time, I got better at the game and Lunastra has become one of my favourite fights. It's a shame she didn't return in Sunbreak, but I know a lot of hunters don't like her, even though she's not that difficult to take down. And I say that you can't have Teostra without Lunastra, and you can't have Lunastra without Teostra. And on that note, let's move on to number 7. Chaotic Gormagala, a variant of Gore that has stopped halfway through its molting process to become a Shugaru. Since its molting process was interrupted by another Shugaru, Chaotic Gore is in constant pain and agony, which makes Chaotic Gore's existence very painful and unbearable. The best way to ease the pain of a Chaotic Gore is to put it out of its misery. I first fought Chaotic Gore in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and then I farmed him in Generations Ultimate and Sunbreak. In Generations Ultimate, I used his hammer since Chaotic Gore weapons were very strong for the endgame, and for Sunbreak they have changed Chaotic Gore's armor skills. It now has some new skills called Strife and Berserk, which can be really good for dual blade sets. His weapons, however, are not that great since they have low dragon element, but they do look awesome if you want to use Chaotic Gore for your layered weapons. To be honest, I love the Gore line. They are among my favourite monsters from the series, and Shugaru is one of my favourite Elder Dragons as well. So I decided to put Chaotic Gore and Shugaru in the same slot, since they are technically the same monster, but Shugaru is just a fully grown form, and Shugaru's fight is just as brutal as it's always been. I have fought all 3 forms of Gore across 3 games, and I adore all 3 of them, even though regular Gormagala has dropped off from my favourites because I love Chaotic Gore more, but Shugaru is still easily one of my all-time favourites still, and I love his risen form in Sunbreak. Overall, I love both Chaotic Gore and Shugaru, and Shigaru has been on many of my lists now, and I was glad that all three of these monsters are in Sunbreak. So on that note, let's move on to number 6. Brute Tigrex, a more aggressive subspecies than regular Tigrex that lives in harsh environments. Due to it living in harsh environments with other larger monsters, its lungs have expanded, which makes its roars a lot louder and more intimidating. I first fought Brute Tigrex in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and then in Iceborne. In Iceborne, he is the best version of Tigrex we ever had. He is more aggressive than he was in previous games. You can unlock Brute Tigrex in the Garden Lands once you level up the Ronville region to level 6, and if you reach Master Rank 70. Since Brute Tigrex has developed stronger lungs, it does have a few new attacks, such as a Sound Beam, which can cut you if you're not prepared. Brute Tigrex's armor is very good once you have reached the endgame, before the update monsters came out. Overall, Iceborne's version of Brute Tigrex is my favourite version of Tigrex, and honestly, I love Brute Tigrex's design. A dark brown with stripes, and it just looks really good on Tigrex, and he has been on many of my monster lists. It was a huge disappointment that Brute and Molten Tigrex didn't return in Sunbreak, since Sunbreak added a lot of subspecies and rare species, but hopefully Brute Tigrex will return in the future game. So on that note, let's move on to number 5. Astalos, one of the flagship monsters from Generations. My second favourite flying wyvern in the series. I first fought Astalos in Generations, and then I took on his deviant, Bolt Reaver Astalos in Generations Ultimate, which is my favourite deviant in the series. Astalos' design is just awesome, since it's a mixture of a dragonfly and also a scorpion. Astalos has returned in Sunbreak, and the Monster Hunter team has changed his moveset quite a bit. He has taken attacks from his deviant Bolt Reaver, such as his Energy Blade, which is one of his most deadly attacks, and also his Tail Electrical Discharge. They have also changed his fully charged state. His limbs now glow bright yellow when he is fully charged. While he is in this state, his limbs become weak to elemental damage, but when he isn't fully charged, he takes less damage from element. Astalos' armor and weapons also return in Sunbreak, but unfortunately they aren't really that useful when you reach the end game. His weapons do look cool, but there are better options for Thunder, such as Kezu and Noah weapons. His armor is decent since it has Power Prolonger and Burst, which can be helpful throughout the story of Sunbreak. Overall, Astalos is my second favourite flying wyvern in the series, and I am glad that he returned in Sunbreak. He is my favourite afflicted monster to solo because I really love his fight. and his energy blade is a good move to practice to switch out his elemental counter on. And also his battle theme from Generations is one of my most favourite tracks in the whole series. I just wish that Bolt Reaver was in Sunbreak, but he wasn't added, which was a letdown. But I hope in a future game Astalos and Bolt Reaver return, since they are iconic monsters. And on that note, let's move on to number 4. Raging Brachydios. A variant of Brachydios that has bonded with the Super Slime, surviving the bonding process, becoming bigger and stronger. Raging Brachydios was first introduced in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and he is single-handedly one of the most hardest monsters in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. But he's also one of the best monsters in the whole series. I first fought Raging Brachydios in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and then I fought him in Iceborne and Generations Ultimate. When he returned in Iceborne, his equipment defied the meta for a short time. His weapons had high raw and purple sharpness, and they were on par with Safi Jiva weapons. But unfortunately, they got power creep by Fatalis. His armor is also really good, since you can mix it with Teostra to get Master's Touch on your set, which was really good back then. The only thing I don't like about Raging Brachydios in Iceborne is his new battle theme. The original Brachydios theme sounds way better. Overall, Raging Brachydios is my most favourite variant and my most favourite brute wyvern in the series. He is one of the best monsters that were introduced in the series, and his fight is just fantastic in Iceborne. And so I was glad he returned. The only thing I suggest though, if you want to experience Raging Brachy in the older games, go play 4 Ultimate or Generations Ultimate. In those games, Raging Brachy is a lot harder. And on that note, let's move on to number 3. The Dragon God, Amatsu. First introduced in Monster Hunter Portable 3rd, Amatsu has a unique body structure similar to that of an Leviathan, and is known to have the ability to control storms and wind, allowing it to alter the weather around it and produce destructive gales, tornadoes and lightning storms. Amatsu's mere presence is a calamitous event which can decimate the landscape and drive out other monsters out of their territories. Its sheer destructive power is greater than natural disasters and can destroy entire cities, making Amatsu a threat feared by many. I first fought Amatsu in Generations Ultimate, and then I soloed him in Sunbreak. Amatsu was added to Sunbreak in Update 5, and is treated as the final monster to end Sunbreak, but that was changed when the Monster team decided to add Primordial Mosano. Amatsu has the best armor set and the strongest weapons in Sunbreak. His armor has a skill called Heaven Sent, a skill that makes weapons not lose their sharpness when it is active, and also does not deplete your stamina, which makes Heaven Sent a must-have skill for most weapons, since you won't lose sharpness or stamina. His weapons have high roar and have a built-in Silkbind boost, which makes all your Wyborg attacks much stronger. The only downside is they have negative 25 affinity. Amatsu has kept all of his attacks from Generation's Ultimate, and was given a lot of new ones and also a new Enraged state. When he reaches this state, he has control over thunder and lightning, striking the arena around him. His new attack in this state is very deadly. Just like Safijiva's and Electrion's ultimate attack, Amatsu vaporizes everything around it, and the only way to avoid it is to Wyborg into the sky, otherwise you will caught instantly. Amatsu's fight in Sunbreak is honestly one of the best, since he is now more aggressive and has a lot of new moves that keep you on your toes. This quest is the only quest in Sunbreak that allows you to Wyvern ride an Apex Enoga, which is pretty epic. Many people and myself were hyped when Apex Enoga joined the fight. It is one of the best moments in Sunbreak. Overall, after farming Amatsu for his equipment, he has become one of my favourite Elder Dragons in this series, and I use his armor for my endgame builds, which was recommended to me by my friend Joe. Amatsu is just an amazing fight in Sunbreak, and I hope he returns in the next Monster Hunter game, since he's only been in 4 games. And on that note, let's move on to number 2. Lucent Nagakuga. First introduced in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, Lucent Nagakuga is a rare species of Nagakuga that has the ability to go invisible, just like Chameleos and Nightcloak Mephisto. He can also produce poison bombs that shoot out of his tail. Lucent Nagakuga was added to Sunbreak in the first update alongside Gold Rathian and Silver Rathalos. With his return, he brought with him his unique armor and weapons. His armor offers 2 new skills that are interesting. Sneak Attack, a skill that gives you an attack buff when you attack a monster from behind or when the monster is sleeping. The other skill is called Adrenaline Rush, which is a skill that gives you a temporary attack buff when you evade an attack perfectly, which is a really good skill on certain weapons, such as Switch Axe for example. His weapons can be good options for poison sets, but they do have low sharpness, but they have decent slots. Lucent Nagakuga's fight has been changed drastically since his introduction in 3 Ultimate, and his fight is my favourite fight in Sunbreak. He is my go-to monster to test out new weapon sets on, and he is just my favourite monster from Sunbreak, mainly because of how good his fight is. Lucent was a monster that I haven't fought before until Sunbreak, and he has now become my favourite flying wyvern and also my most favourite rare species in the series. Lucent Nagakuga is number 2. But before we go to number 1, we got some honorable mentions. Velkhana, the Iceborne Elder Dragon. She was in my top 10 monsters from Iceborne, but unfortunately she's not one of my favourites out of Iceborne, hence why she's here. Seregios. He was in my top 10 monsters from the series, but over time he got replaced with other monsters. Even though I still love him, hence why he is here. Stygian Sonoga. He was also in my top 10 monsters from Iceborne, but for this list I decided to replace him with Thunderlord Sonoga because I find Thunderlord more fun. But I still love Stygian Sonoga, hence why he is here. And so, let's move on to number 1. Alatreon, the blazing black dragon, the endgame boss of Monster to Try. Alatreon is my most favourite monster in the series. He has been on many of my monster lists, and for most of you who have followed me for a while, should know that I use Alatreon as a mascot for my channel. Alatreon was first introduced in Monster to Try, and then he made his way into Generations Ultimate, and then Iceborne. When he came to Iceborne, he caused a bit of a stir in the Monster Hunter community, mainly because people said that he is too hard. Don't get me wrong, he is hard, but he is a black dragon, he is supposed to be hard. It got so bad that people started making petitions for him to be nerfed, which isn't really necessary, since the game tells you how to defeat him. Capcom has changed Alatreon quite a bit since his last appearance, which was Generations Ultimate. Alatreon can change its form at will. He has 3 forms: Fire Active, Ice Active, and his new form, Dragon Active. He controls all the elements, even water and thunder. Alatreon has an expansive moveset, but it is quite easy to learn. Alatreon has recovery animations, so he will take a bit of time to recharge from his attacks, which gives you a lot of windows for you to punish him. Alatreon's gimmick is that it's elemental unstable, so you have to take elemental weapons against him. For Fire Active, you need to take Ice, which is his biggest weakness, and for Ice Active, you need to take Fire, same again. And that's all you need for him. You don't need to take any other element, and also war weapons don't have an effect on Alatreon. If you do enough elemental damage to him, you will trip him and weaken him, which is important. When it comes to Alatreon, your main focus is to break his horns. because his horns are the source of his powers, which can only be broken when he is in Dragon Active. Dragon Active is where he is at his most dangerous, since he can use every element in this form, but it is essential to get that horn break, which helps you in the long run in this fight. So, about getting those elemental trips. You need to get those trips to weaken his new ultimate attack, which is called Eschaton Judgment. Eschaton Judgment is Electron's brand new ultimate attack that he didn't have in the previous games. He supercharges all of his elements and then releases it, vaporizing everything in the arena. If you're not careful, he will kill you in a matter of seconds, but you can weaken this state by getting 3 of those elemental trips, which will weaken it by a lot and you'll survive. Even by suppressing him once, you can live on 1 HP. Also, this is where his horns come into play. If you do not get the horn break when he does Eschaton Judgment, he will change element. So if you was fighting him in the fire active but didn't get his horn break, when he does his Eschaton Judgment, he will turn into ice active, and if you're using an ice weapon, it won't work on him, he will become immune. So it's essential to get those horns broken, because if you don't, you will struggle. Electron is hands down the best fighter in Iceborne, and also the best designed monster when it comes to its mechanic and its fight. Overall, Electron is my most favourite monster in the series. I love his design and his battle theme. It's one of my personal favourites in the whole series, and I was glad that he returned in Iceborne. He has been my favourite ever since I seen him in the trailer, and after soloing him for the first time, he left a big impression on me, and I hope one day Electron will return for a future game. So these are my top 20 monsters from the Monster Hunter series, and this list was difficult to make since there's a lot of monsters that I love from the previous games. And this video took me a few weeks to put together, which was a lot of fun. But this is my longest monster list to date, and it was difficult to pick 20 monsters. My next commentary video will be a weapon showcase video for the PS5 version of Sunbreak, which is still in the works. So I'd like to know what your favourite monsters are. Comment your favourites down below, and like and share this video if you enjoyed it. So anyway, I'll catch you guys at the next video. Thank you all for watching, and of course, happy hunting!